J'ouvre.
I now call the meeting to order. Welcome to the 12th meeting of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Veterans Affairs. Pursuant to Standing Order 1082 and the motion adopted by the committee on September 18th, 2025, the committee is meeting as part of its study on suicide prevention among veterans.
Before we welcome our witnesses, for people who are viewing, I would like to provide a trigger warning. We will be discussing experiences related to suicide and grief. This may be triggering for viewers with similar experience. If you feel distress or need help, please advise our clerk. For all witnesses and for Member of Parliament, it is important to recognize that these are difficult discussions. Also for our witness, if you do not feel comfortable at any point, please let us know. We can pause our committee for you. Donc, pour les témoins, si vous ne vous sentez pas à l'aise, s'il vous plaît.
So, witnesses, if you do not feel comfortable, please let us know and we will pause the committee.
La réunion.
Today's meeting is being held in a hybrid format in accordance with the rules of procedure. Members may participate in person or via the Zoom application.
Participant to consult the guidelines written on the cards on the table. These measures are in place to help prevent audio and feedback incidents and to protect the health and safety of all participants, including the interpreters. You will also notice a QR code on the card which links to a short awareness video. Écoutez, pour garantir le bon déroulement de la réunion, j'aimerais transmettre certaines.
To ensure the meeting runs smoothly, I would like to give some instructions to witnesses and members. Before speaking, wait until I call on you. If you are participating by video conference, click on the microphone icon to activate your microphone. Please mute yourself when you are not speaking.
For those on Zoom, at the bottom of your screen, you can do a selection, the appropriate channel for interpretation, either floor, English, or French. For those in the room, you can use the earpiece and select the desired channel. Finally, a reminder that all comments should be addressed through the chair. Pour les députés présents dans la salle, si vous souhaitez prendre.
For members present in the room, if you wish to speak, please raise your hand. I don't think we have anyone on Zoom. Thank you for your understanding. I would now like to welcome our witnesses.
As individual, Mr. Gordon Early, Madame Marie-Noëlle Duhem, Mr. Justin McKay, Mr. Darren Simons, Mr. David Bona, and from Seven Edge Success, Inc., Ernie Wooters. We will start by inviting each witness to deliver their opening remarks for a period, and I say for about 5 minutes, but as you can see, there's a few of you, so please try to stay within our 5 minutes mark. Once all our witnesses have given their opening remarks, the rest of the meeting will be dedicated to a series of questions and answers with the members of the committee. Mr. Gordon Early, the floor is yours for 5 minutes, please.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. My French isn't very good, so I apologize.
Thank you for this opportunity. I decided to cut my wrists on a course in 2015 on Canadian Forces Base, Wainwright, Alberta. Immediately, as soon as I drew blood, I knew it was a mistake, and I got myself a course vehicle and drove myself to the hospital. When I got to the hospital, the nurse said that, hey, we're going to have to call the base, call the police, get your chain of command involved, and bring this up through the chain of command about a suicide attempt. I was in the Special Forces at the time and said, hey, I'm working on kit. I smoothed it over as much as I could. I'm Special Forces. I slipped. I would never do that, blah, blah, blah. And they believed it. And the next day I went on course and I finished that course. And for the next 5 years, I used suicide and suicidal ideation as a coping mechanism for mental health. I spent 15 years in the Canadian Armed Forces, half as a airborne light infantry reconnaissance patrolman, and the other half as a special operator and joint terminal attack controller. I'm deployed to Africa, Iraq, Afghanistan, and trained globally, not only on the leading edge of combat operations, but in the highest echelons of our military headquarters. My name is Gordon Hurley. I am a retired veteran, and I'm a veteran advocate, specifically for psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy. Right now, Veterans Affairs Canada is not fulfilling the requirement of giving veterans the care they deserve with ketamine-assisted psychotherapy. Veterans Affairs will pay for ketamine, the drug itself, but they will not pay for psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy. It's in the name, assisted therapy, psychedelic-assisted therapy, assisted therapy. It is not being covered by Veterans Affairs at this time, and we're putting veterans at extreme risk in very, very fragile mental states. I would like to let you know that on October 31st, the Australian government, Veterans Affairs, not only is it legal, but they have funded psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy within their own military for veterans. So that's MDMA and psilocybin. The government, our government, is cutting approximately $4 billion over the next 4 years for medical cannabis. Okay, that's in line with market value, but what are we going to do with this money? Are we just going to absorb it and it becomes another talking point about how fiscally responsible we are as a government? Or are we going to keep that money within Veterans Affairs proper and put it to research programs or new initiatives that our peer nations are well surpassing us? Veterans Affairs needs some help. And like the rest of the people on this panel, take our hands. We're trying very hard to make this loud and clear for you to listen to the veteran. Because I've been surrounded by the people that I have in the last couple of years, navigating the charity and veteran sector, my team has come up with something. And that something is called the Veteran Accelerated Access Research Program. And I'm going to read it from here so I don't mess it up. The Veteran Accelerated Access Research Program proposes a structured model for safe, regulated access to psychedelic-assisted therapy. The pilot program, not study, would operate under both provincial and federal frameworks, leveraging provincial leadership such as Alberta's progress in regulated psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy. We will be able to integrate this with a federalized pathway administered by Health Canada. This collaboration would align Veterans Affairs Canada's ongoing interest in identifying a lawful mechanism for accessing psychedelic therapy and would also strengthen intergovernmental cooperation on innovative health solutions. The proposed pilot would begin with 10 to 15 participants receiving MDMA-assisted psychotherapy at an approved clinic in Alberta under the supervision of a multidisciplinary team, including a psychiatrist, a nurse practitioner, and a psychologist. This treatment would adhere to rigorous standards of safety, ethics, and clinical care. Future phases would expand to include additional compounds with therapeutic potential, such as psilocybin and ibogaine, pending regulatory approval and oversight. Following completion, a systematic evaluation would capture feedback from participants, clinicians, and administrators while analyzing safety, feasibility, and efficacy data. A retrospective research review would then assess treatment outcomes and inform future program expansion to additional provinces. This process ensures that the program remains accountable, evidence-based, and aligned with the highest standards of medical and ethical practices. This initiative directly addresses the inefficiencies and delays currently associated with the Special Access Program and the Section 56 exemption. By streamlining access through a regulated pilot, the Veterans Accelerated Access Research Program aims to deliver timely, effective, and ethically sound care for veterans in critical need. This scientific evidence will guide future policy and improve long-term outcomes for those who have served Canada with honor. I came here to tell, a little story. You guys can hear about me more. You can go on the internet and Google me, and you can get in-depth podcasts. I came here with a solution. So please take our hand. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Early. J'aimerais maintenant inviter Madame.
Now I'd like to invite Madame Duhem for 5 minutes, please. Thank you. Thank you. Do I have to press a button? The first drink is never the problem. O Canada, our home and native land. Ottawa is built on the unceded territory of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation that paid the ultimate price. We managed to save a few men to save their people by tolerating the invaders, us. Could you help me, please, to open the bag? And the garbage. Where's my third page? Thank you, Chair. Members of the committee. Mom and Dad. Thank you. Dear humans. Thank you for offering me your help. It's been over 30 years that I've asked to appear here. Helen managed to make it happen. But I'm a woman.
Let's honor the service and sacrifice of all souls who have served in wars, conflict, and peace operations. Vigilamus prote. Merci, Papa.
Thank you, Dad. Thank you, Mom. Thank you for passing on your knowledge and your interest in Latin.
God for thee, guard, God. The anthem changed recently to include all of us, to be more inclusive. The anthem started in Quebec in 1880. How many years did it take to realize that women were also worth it? C'était 2018, je pense.
It was 2018, I think. 1880. During Saint Jean Baptiste in 1880. And I'll put that in the trash. I'm still cold. I'm going to keep my coat on because it's really cold outside.
Bon, tout d'un coup, il fait chaud.
Now it's hot all of a sudden. Thank you. Mauve, the color of hope. Thank you, Josie. Mauve is important. Can I have my Kleenex, Dad? No, I want it from my dad. I hope he has it.
En latin, une serviette.
In Latin, a Kleenex. Oh, where's my speech? Where am I in my speech? Latin, a Kleenex. There are two words in Latin. One that's mappa, and I can't remember the other. There's a small one to blow your nose, and another one to keep. To keep your things with you. COVID, we lived that. But there's another. A beautiful cover is Romans were crazy, but not that crazy. They brought their napkin, and their host put the gift within it and wrapped it up. Every human left with something. Where am I in terms of time? Chair? Take your time, but it's okay. It's all right. You can take a few more minutes. If there's time at the end, I'll ask for the others to go ahead. I'll be respectful of their time. Your time is important, my time as well. And I was able to appear. If you want more, well, you know where to find me.
Thank you. Whoa.
No one's saying that. Okay? No one's saying that. We got you.
Onward.
No, not onward. We got you. Right here, right now.
Semper Fi.
Marie-Hélène.
It's okay.
Non, s'il vous plaît. T'es sûr?
Are you sure you want to go to the next person? All right. I just wanted to make sure. Thank you very much.
Okay. For 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I won't take 5 minutes. I'll keep my remarks short. I joined the reserves at 17 years old. Before I was 18, I became one of the 19,000 members of the military sexual misconduct lawsuit. I was sexually assaulted while I was sleeping at night by an older soldier. I went on to serve 2 tours with 2 PPCLI in Bosnia. If I had kept drinking the way I was drinking up until 2011, I wouldn't be sitting here giving you these statements right now. Right now, I'm the Sergeant at Arms at the Royal Canadian Legion in Amherst, Nova Scotia. And in 2023, I hope I helped some Afghan veterans with some healing by unveiling an Afghan memorial in Nova Scotia. I too almost took my own life if it wasn't for another service member helping me out. So that's why I implore you to take all of our information, Mr. Hurley's information, Mr. Simmons' information, Mr. Bowe's information, and Mr. Wooder's information, and take it to Veterans Affairs. Cutting the benefits that we get, i.e. like the shockwave therapy that some veterans get for chronic pain, don't think it's a good avenue to go, because then you're going to push veterans to another avenue unless you're going to give them something else to take away that pain. So I implore you to heed the recommendations of this committee and take them to back. That's all I'll say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McKay. For 5 minutes, Mr. Simons.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I'm an Army brat and a veteran, having served just over 2 years in the Canadian Army and more than 33 years in the RCMP. I've lived in 6 provinces, 1 territory in Germany. With the RCMP, I served in 10 detachments, throughout Alberta, the Northwest Territories, and Saskatchewan. Many of those detachments were limited duration posts and isolated posts. My wife Tracy and I have been married since 1999. Our son Nathan is studying to be a chiropractor. I stay active and volunteer regularly. The physical and psychological challenges faced by veterans are also faced by their families. Spouses, children, and loved ones see the changes, the pain, the outbursts, and the silences. They are more perceptive than we think. They suffer too. Retirement or leaving the Royal Canadian Mounted Police or the Canadian Armed Forces doesn't erase these challenges. Sometimes it makes them worse. I did not know I could apply for Veterans of Benefits until I had over 10 years in the RCMP. Many RCMP members and Canadian Armed Forces members don't even consider themselves veterans because they did not deploy. This lack of awareness is an education gap that must be addressed. If we were treated properly earlier, we would be healthier now. My early experiences with Veterans Affairs were positive. My first claims were approved. But when I learned I was disabled, I panicked. I was afraid it was going to affect my career. Thankfully, a VAC employee reassured me. I thought, finally, an organization that is here to help me. Unfortunately, that feeling didn't last. After applying for a psychological condition, I was denied. I was told to wait until the RCMP had completed their investigation, a process that took over 9 years. Upon attending a hearing in 2020, I was finally approved and advised my benefits would go back 3 years. I was told I should have appealed earlier. I was following the direction of VAC. I was waiting. Why did someone not follow up with me and tell me that? For me and many veterans, it's not as much what we saw and did, it's how we were treated during and afterwards. Amongst many veterans clients, it is perceived that initial applications are often denied and appeals are often successful. It makes many veterans feel like VAC expects you to give up. One veteran told me, you need to cheat codes, like a video game, to figure out how to win. Each delay, each denial, erodes trust and hope. I had a claim initially denied, and when I phoned and requested further information, I determined it was because they had received the wrong X-ray. I was denied mileage, and when I called to inquire why I was denied mileage, I was told, you filled out the wrong form. Why not provide more input as to why there was a denial? Why not make it easier to get help instead of harder? I paid out of pocket for psychological care because Blue Cross and VAC would only reimburse part of the cost, even though the RCMP had been paying my psychologist full when I was serving. I was told to find someone less expensive. After much back and forth trying to find a workaround, I gave up. Fortunate for me, my psychologist found a workaround. However, I was out hundreds of dollars. I can afford it, but many veterans cannot. I know one who pays to take a taxi for treatment and has stopped trying to claim for it because it's too frustrating. There are good people working for Veterans Affairs. But as my father said when I was a young child playing sports, 7 attaboys get wiped out by 1 aw crap. The negative experiences overshadow the good ones. VAC and Blue Cross need to communicate better. Veterans shouldn't be passed back and forth between systems. We need one point of contact, someone who checks in, follows up, and helps navigate the maze. VAC should be also proactive. No one has ever asked if my wife or son needed support, even though they've lived through the same struggles I have. At a retreat funded by the Legion, not VAC, I was asked to bring my wife. This is where we met Ernie. It was a breakthrough for me and my wife for different reasons. That support worked, and it helped my wife more than it helped me, which helped me. I often ask, why are we all treated the same, regardless of need or circumstance? If someone slammed a door right now, in this room, we would all see, feel, hear, and experience what transpired differently. That's because we are all different. While I was preparing my speaking notes, my wife asked me a question I still can't answer. How many people need to die before they get it? People need help. When you're at your lowest, everything feels too hard, and you want to give up. For some of us, it's just a financial loss. For others, it's their lives. I truly hope this committee not only listens, but hears what veterans are saying. We're not looking for handouts. We're looking for help, fairness, and respect. We want to heal, to be better for ourselves, our families, our communities, and our country. We are the ones most likely to continue to serve. You can't afford to lose us. Thank you for your time and hearing the voices of those who have served, their families, and their supporters.
Thank you very much, Mr. Simons. I would like, for 5 minutes, Mr. Bona.
Thank you. My name's Dave Bona. I tripped and stumbled and fell into a role 9 years ago when I discovered I was poisoned by the anti-malaria drug mefloquine. And in my search for answers, I inadvertently became a point of contact for injured veterans looking for assistance. Very quickly on, I realized there's quite a large problem. So I was on social media and I was watching the suicides come across my feed again and again, and I was like, someone's got to do something about this. So I started going on veteran Facebook groups, chat groups and stuff, and talking about my own journey and my own symptoms and stuff like that. And whenever I'd get veterans commenting on it, I would literally pounce on them, and I would end up creating a situation where I get these guys on the phone and I would educate people on their injury and point them in the proper direction to receive help. Part of this, here comes the hard part. I started having the families reach out. I had to develop a technique on dealing with these people because it was suicide and there was a lot of strong emotion involved. So I developed a system where when I got the information from the individual, I would track down someone this individual deployed with to find out if they took mefloquine and, more importantly, if they were having the adverse reactions to the drug. Once I established that, I then reached out to someone who had intimate contact with this individual in the last 2 weeks of their lives. Then I could see what their state was, their mental health state. And with that information, I was able to draw conclusions on whether they were poisoned by mefloquine and the suicide was attributable to mefloquine poisoning. I'm not a doctor. I've lived with suicide. I know what CLP tastes like. I sat in back bunkers with the muzzle of a rifle in my mouth, clicking the safety off and taking up the slack on that trigger too many times to recall. I have attempted suicide 3 times. Each time I had someone step in to stop me. Very lucky to be here right now. Yes, so if you have any questions on mefloquine, I've got all the answers. I went to all the conferences. I talked to the experts. I immersed myself in it. And yes, thank you very much for your time.
Mr. Bona, thank you very much. Mr. Wouters, for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee, and fellow Canadians. Before I make a few comments, I have provided speaker notes, but I want to make a number of defining comments for you. But before I do that, I want to make it clear that I honor and respect all my peers and fellow mental health servants in this field, and that their value and contribution is not the issue I'm discussing. What I am discussing is I'm a professional engineer Also have a master's in psychology and a number of other credentials. And my evaluation is based on the critique of the process. That's what's most important here. So I want to just underscore that. 25 years ago, I had a defining moment at an international police conference as the police chaplain in our city when the keynote speaker got up and stated, "Did you realize every year in North America that a police officer will take his or her life?" And at that moment, I did not know that. But as an engineer, I couldn't help but grapple with the question, why? So since that conference and 4 or 5 years previous, almost 30 years now, I've sought out to discover the enigma of suicide, which I have an answer for you today. And so in part of this, I've devoted to that. The statistics, which I'm sure you've all heard, is that almost every hour a military personnel just in North America will take his or her life, every hour. And that's terrible and it's shocking, but every 43 seconds globally, someone's taking their life. So we often talk about there's no silver bullet, and I'd like to argue that I believe suicide is a silver bullet. And I'm going to describe how it gets there. And so when I think about these statistics, they're not just statistics, they're souls. And I am specifically talking about the soul because that is the breaking point that a person gets to when they decide to take their life. When you think about this, the soul, it's the one part in the human design that's absolutely missing from psychology and psychiatry. So it's ironic that the 5 letters of both of those terms in the Greek mean study of the soul, yet neither of them address the soul when it comes to trauma. And I'm here to declare that the soul is actually the missing link to resolving trauma. So when you think of science, and from all of creation to present day, there is a triad formula, and I'll make it simple with the fire triangle. Most people are familiar that you need oxygen, you need combustibles, and an ignition source. And if I can stand here for quite a bit discussing science on how that triad exists absolutely everywhere. So as an engineer, when I'm trying to solve a fatal failure of some design, the first thing I consider is the materials, the structure, and what's available for the design. So from studying suicide, what do we have available to overcome? You have a soul, a brain, and a body, which is the triad that I'm talking about. So if I was to get each of you to take a pen and draw 3 or 4 triangles out on your paper, I would say at the peak, I want you to put the soul. On the bottom left-hand corner, I want you to put the brain, and at the bottom right-hand corner, put the body. This is our design, and it's perfect, by the way. And so if I was to say that you went to a medical doctor and asked the question that they're asking, they would say, where does it hurt? Of the 3 components of design, which of those 3 is the medical doctor addressing? It's the body. Let's go to psychology now. Psychology talks about behavior. And I have a master's in psychology. These are my peers. I care about them desperately, but it's not a science, and neither is psychiatry. And so the fact that they don't meet these 3 criteria on the triangle, they are addressing the brain. Soul's left out, the body's mostly left out. So for both psychology and psychiatry, they're dealing with 1/3 of the solution. And if I go into the theology component, they would deal with the soul, but now they're leaving out the brain and the body. So my point is, none of these approaches, even if I had all 4 practitioners in the room, could actually resolve trauma. The only way to solve trauma ultimately is the #1 issue that leads to suicide. Unresolved trauma. Now, where is the trauma occurring? It's occurring at the soul level. So trauma is an offense, and that offense goes to the soul. And so the target of trauma is actually to degrade and dehumanize a person's self-value and self-worth. And the system that is created has actually driven suicide by the nature of the way we treat or do not treat. So one day I was driving my vehicle and I phoned Dave Bona, because I worked with Dave. I said, Dave, I just thought of something. I had an epiphany moment. The epiphany moment was, in wartime, strategy is torture. There are 4 components for a successful torture: mental anguish, physical anguish, emotional anguish, spiritual anguish. And when you achieve those 4, you will end up with death. And suicide is the answer. That's the answer that people get to. Every day, our military, every second, every minute, every hour, 24/7, is under those four. Unresolved trauma leads to the majority of illness and disease. And as a result of that, that includes mental illness. And so this is the missing link for resolving trauma, is the soul. Neuroscience, near-death experiences, all of these point at the fact that not only does the soul exist, but it exists beyond death, which means in order for consciousness to be beyond death, you must have the constituents of a soul, which is your mind, emotions, and free will.
Wrap up, Mr. Wooters, and then we'll start the question. 10 seconds, please.
Absolutely. So when I think about the primary drivers behind suicide, is that what the perfect storm absolutely is that unresolved trauma, number one. Number two, mind-altering drugs of all sorts. Number three, non-scientific models that cannot resolve trauma. And then the global trauma illiteracy and incompetence, and the continual re-traumatization of family and systems.
Thank you very
You're
much, Mr. Wooters. Thank you. On behalf of the committee, I want to say thank you for your courage in being here. For those who have served, thank you for serving to your country. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your very busy schedule to be with us today. On this note, I will invite for 6 minutes Mr. Richards. Merci.
Thank you, and let me just echo your thanks to all of the veterans who are with us today for your service. As I see it, the government, through Veterans Affairs, has two basic obligations to veterans through which everything that they do should be filtered. The first one is to provide services and supports that veterans need to live their lives. And the second one is commemoration. The latter is how we honor your service. And the former is how we meet the obligations that we have to veterans for what they've given to this country. And I think what I've heard in the opening statements from a number of you is it's about some failures in both those areas. So I'd like to explore them both a little further if time allows. I guess I'd like to start with, we had a witness, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, who brought to us that she was aware of 20 veterans who had come to the government looking for help to live their lives and had instead been offered medical assistance in dying. I just wanted to put it out there, if any of you have experienced that, if any of you are aware of a fellow veteran who's experienced that. I see Mr. Bona, you've got your hand up, and if others want it, Mr. McKay. So let's start with you, Mr. Bona, and we'll work our way across for any of you who've experienced that.
I deal with the veterans that are the reason why there's bulletproof glass in your Veterans Affairs office. I deal with the veterans that have extreme anger management issues because that's part of the injury from mefloquine. It causes uncontrolled rages and seizures. So these individuals are the ones actually living down by the river in that tent because they can't access veteran benefits. I've got a veteran off the streets a bunch of times. And it's dealing with Veterans Affairs, with individuals that they're not set up to do this. It's the bureaucrats. Everything is set up so it makes it easy for the bureaucrats to do their job. And the injured veteran, he's got to jump through hoop after hoop after hoop. And you even heard with Darren, he's saying he's trying to do a simple travel claim, and it's denied. No one will follow up and ask you for if you need assistance with anything anymore. When I first came onto Veterans Benefits in 2000, I had a case manager. There's no more case managers. I've requested 4 months ago, assistance from Veterans Affairs. I got a call about a month and a half later from a random 1-800 number. And it was this woman that barely even spoke English. And I'm deaf as a post. And when you have someone with a strong accent, I can't understand you. That was Veterans Affairs' response to me. It's gotten to the point where I don't do my travel anymore because I can't fight with them.
Yeah.
I don't even oh my God.
Yeah.
Yes, sorry.
So, no, so.
The medically assisted suicide. Yeah. So these veterans, these are the guys that they can't get treatment because they're not functional enough in society to actually walk into a Veterans Affairs office. I need help. So they can't get the help.
I want to let the other guys jump in, and
they can't get the help.
2 more minutes, so just try to.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I gotta
make sure the other guys get a chance too. So.
Sorry about that. I thought I turned that off. No, but these are the guys that are ending up getting offered medically assisted suicide because they can't get care.
Right. That's the challenge, exactly.
Like you got a veteran, he can't get care, so let's just offer him suicide.
Yeah, that's unfortunately exactly what the problem is. Mr. McKay and then Mr. Hurley, I guess you'll have to be as quick as you can. Yeah.
Just briefly, while holding an event about 1.5 years ago at our local Legion, I was pulled aside by a veteran's wife, and she divulged to me that her husband was offered medical assistance and dying. This man's a double Afghan veteran. We're not broken farm animals that are lame to be put down. We're broken soldiers.
And sorry, that happened 1.5 years ago, so it would be after the period of time after which the government claims it's no longer happening.
Right. It was during one of your first studies. It was after one of the first studies that was going on.
Okay, Mr. Hurley.
Yeah, I had a close friend who was offered MAID. He was one of the first guys who went public, and he was just reaching for regular services. To hear the story from his mouth completely caught him off guard that MAID was going to even be an option when he's just looking for normal services. This guy's not suicidal, what Dave was talking about. He's just a normal guy, sure, maybe pushed to his limits with Veterans Affairs, but to be offered MAID, it's not on. It's full stop. We cannot be offering MAID to people.
Couldn't agree more. This kind of gets us to the next topic, which I'll have to explore in a future round, which is sanctuary trauma, and I'd like to explore that one with all of you after if I get another opportunity. So thank you for being here today.
Thank you very much, Mr. Richard. Mr. Clark, for 6 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you to all of our witnesses for being here today, for your testimony, and for your service. I really want to say that off the top. Mr. Hurley, I wanted to touch on some things you mentioned in your opening statement around psychedelics and the work that you're doing and also hoping to do. And I think over the course of this study, we've heard this issue come up more than once, without question. Just last week, actually, on Remembrance Day, I was at a Legion in my riding, and a veteran came up to me and was talking to me about the value of ketamine in his life and his recovery. So there's no question that it's an issue that is out there and people see value in it. So I'm just curious, you touched, I hope I wrote this down correctly when you mentioned it, Veteran Accelerated Access Research Program. I know you talked about it a bit in your opening statement, but if you could just elaborate for us what your vision is for that, how you think it would help, and what VAC and the government could do in your mind to make that happen.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we talk about the Veteran Accelerated Access Research Program, we're talking about a partnership. Veterans Affairs has a wait-and-see approach when it comes to all medical anything, which makes sense because Health Canada is the one in charge of it. So we're petitioning Veterans Affairs to change medical stuff that they can't even change anyways. So let's lead with Health Canada, and we'll fund it through Veterans Affairs. Implemented provincially through Alberta, who already has psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy baked into their healthcare system. So we're going to run the pilot program through Alberta, test and adjust, and then re-roll. That is the essential framework for it.
And, thank you. And I think you said it, in your mind it would be 10 to 15 patients in the beginning. And you mentioned MDMA in your opening statement. Are there other psychedelics that in your mind would be beneficial to explore as well?
Absolutely. So it's important to bring up something. It's called the Special Access Program. That's the legal framework of the legal way to get psychedelic-assisted therapy in Canada. Psilocybin, MDMA, legal. Ketamine, completely legal. The Special Access Program was made for extreme circumstances. So little Timmy at CHEO has a rare form of blood cancer. He needs an experimental drug that hasn't been approved by Health Canada. You apply through a bureaucratic process called the Special Access Program, allows little Timmy to get his medicine, go on. Canada is forcing people to go through the Special Access Program, which is meant for extreme cases of healthcare. Psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy is not an extreme form of healthcare. It's actually defined under the Supreme Court of Canada that won this summer in a landmark case that actually, as a Charter of Rights and Freedoms, your rights as a Canadian under subsection 7 to reasonable healthcare. Reasonable healthcare is the key word. So we go from extreme, right, extreme use, to now we're saying reasonable healthcare. Well, law says what is reasonable? Who determines what's reasonable? A doctor determines what's reasonable, not a bureaucratic system. You're forcing people to go through Special Access Program, which is a bureaucratic pathway to get an extreme version of an exotic drug, whereas in actuality, you'd need to create a new health regulatory system specific for it. None of this has to do with ethics. That's the big thing that we're missing, the point here. This is all administrative. Stuff, you can access this stuff. You're just telling people to jump through 50,000 hoops, which at the end of the day goes to the Supreme Court of Canada, which then gets overturned in favor of the plaintiff, because our Charter of Rights deem it that we're allowed to have that care. Australia, 2 weeks, October 31st, funding psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy, psilocybin, MDMA. America last week just expanded their psychedelic research program to over 9 veterans hospitals. We're one of the most progressive countries in the world, and we're up here doing what exactly?
And you touched on a couple other things I wanted to get your take on too, with the Australia example. But also, is there a certain type of veteran, or in your experience, or a certain type of person in your mind that this type of treatment would be most effective for? Is there commonalities you see, or is it difficult to generalize?
Yeah, it's hard to generalize. I gave you my little example when I let in. I could talk for hours. I am on the leading edge of this. I just released a documentary 2 weeks ago called Advanced Force Operations, which is a mission set in the special operations world where you go and you set the conditions for the regular force to come and follow on, right? I did the same thing. I'm doing that for the psychedelic landscape for our veterans. So I did a documentary on ketamine-assisted psychotherapy because it's a lack of education. So is there a specific veteran? I've seen it take a veteran off suicide, just like that, no problem. The flip side of that, with no support, putting this person back into his home in Petawawa, all of a sudden he goes bonkers because he doesn't have the healthcare systems around him, which then all of a sudden people say, oh, the scary thing about psychedelics, yeah, it's a very, very, very powerful substance that you're taking. And without the proper people taking care of you, hence a regulated program to actually help people through this, and you're not just getting guys like Gordo sending people to Mexico and Peru or getting treatment in their house from someone I don't know. It's unacceptable, and it's actually a massive fault on the government of Canada that we're not taking care of this properly.
20 seconds.
20 seconds, okay. Thank you, Mr. Hurley. I appreciate that, and I thank you for coming to the committee with a solution and a structure in mind based on your experience and the work that you're doing. So I only have about 10 seconds left, but I want to thank you for that and appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Clark.
For 6 minutes, Madame Gaudreau. Thank you, Madam Chair. If Madame Duhem would like, because I think she set things up, but when it's been 30 years that you're trying to say something, well, we have time, and I really have the impression that there's been a big trauma. We don't want to re-traumatize her. It's her choice to be here, but I think saying it is important not only for us, it's also important for you. What are you missing? What would you like to explain to us about what you experienced? Sandra Perron. In 1990, She did her course. I did mine in 95. If you would like to know how the Army treated us.
Chloe?
There's a movie about it. Chloe. I said, I need help. In 30 seconds, she bought my ticket and she said she'd come with me. Chloe was the general director of the Path. Do you know the Path, the Sentier? Sandra Perron saved my life in 96 in Kingston. She almost finished my suicide this year several times, not because she wanted to, because her hands were tied. It's a question of money, of laws, of regulations. It's an aberration of capitalism. Be careful. It's a traumatizing film. Go watch the movie, but make sure you have help. I'm lucky. I'm lucky to have met psychologists. Not the first psychologist I saw in Kingston. I asked for help. They sent me to a psychologist. The psychologist said it all. Told everything to the minister. The minister said, oh, suicide, rape. You're starting to talk. Even the D cadets. The commander, the 12th commander. Oh, you're Madame Duhem. You're one of the 3 only people who... I underwent electroshock memory, so I can't remember all the time. I had electroshock therapy. Electroshock therapy is my life raft. They kept my life raft, but it's not safe for other people. Yes, but it's my life raft. You know what a life raft is? Corkscrew. That's a corkscrew in order to drink my wine. Excuse me, I need to take out another one. Alcohol. I'm sorry, do you have other questions? I don't want you to get into detail, but earlier you talked about 30 years. Then you talked about your life raft. What would help you now? What would help you and others? Brothers in arms with what you've experienced. You can talk about it or not. We need to hear. Look forward, onwards. Find a common mission to save our souls. The magic numbers 3. Ask my daughters. I told my daughters I'm trying to be better for you. It's their father's birthday today. Thank you, Jean-François.
Of post-traumatic stress disorder, the ultimate violence that we were all willing to give to all humans. Mind, body, and soul. You paid millions to train me, and then you discarded me. La valeur sociale d'une poubelle.
The social value of a trash can is billions. Billions that we'd prefer to invest in war. There are 2 humans, something like that.
Found a lady intoxicated. Passed out in a pool of blood. She knew she was pregnant, but she was afraid to go to the hospital. She wasn't safe there. They would steal her kid. She gave birth on a freezing evening. She didn't have a red coat to keep her warm. She had multiple layers of dirty clothes. Deux super femmes.
2 superwomen with their honesty dressed me today.
Strangled before many times. But I wanted to wear this trigger to show you that all the money that you invest in soldiers, les millions de dollars,
The millions of dollars that you invested, the salary of a prostitute that you give me every month, the luxury credit card, a $30,000 credit card. Personally,
I've been asking for help. And people say, what's in it for me? What time do we have? Is it done? Oh, sorry. Next person, please.
Merci beaucoup.
thank you very much. Now we'll go to the next round of questions, 5 minutes for each MP.
Minutes, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to our witnesses for coming here today. Your testimonies have been extremely powerful, and sometimes we have to face some of the things that have been ignored, and so I apologize that. Apologize for what you've experienced. When we keep hearing the term dehumanizing the soul, it's troubling. I've got a few questions that I'd like to ask, and Mr. Simmons, I'd like to start with you. In your opening statement, you mentioned that you were a base brat, which means your father served in the military, your mother?
My father served for over 30 years. Did 5 years in Germany and 2 tours of Cyprus and served across the country.
Okay, I'm going to ask you a question here. Did he ever deal with Veterans Affairs?
I think he was a client shortly before I was. I don't know if he was a client until he had almost close to retirement.
Okay, I just wanted to know what kind of service he may have received compared to the service that you have received as a client of Veterans Affairs.
When he passed away, I dealt with his estate, and I believe one of the issues he was claimed for was hearing, and that was about it that I recall.
Okay, so did he get that claim for hearing?
Yep.
Okay, all right. So would you say that the service that he received was better than the service you received?
No, I would say he was probably not informed as much as what he could claim for.
Okay.
Because I believe he was entitled to much more.
Right.
As a Army brat moving around, you lose your social networks, you gain social networks, and I saw the effect it had on my mother. So there was a divorce out of it. So I think he probably needed some help psychologically, but never applied for it, or I don't know why.
Okay, so you mentioned in your testimony as well that you met Mr. Wooters, and it wasn't just you that went through his program, or that it was your wife Anybody else in your family that went through it?
That's just, I was asked to bring my wife. My wife asked, why am I coming? And I said, I've been asked to bring you, and we're both glad that we went together.
Okay, can you share a little bit about what you experienced?
It was a different approach, and that's the big thing. He talked to me, talked to my wife, got us to open up. For me, there was an aha moment in it, which helped me. But the big thing is my wife's been through a lot. When you walk through a muddy puddle and get yourself muddy, when you come home, you're still going to have mud on you. And she's going to see that. So she saw a lot of what I went through. And some of it, I talked to a veteran recently, and he didn't realize how much his wife knows about what he went through and how it affected her. So
Okay, can I ask you a quick question? Was that covered by Veterans Affairs?
that was covered by the Royal Canadian Legion, Saskatchewan.
Okay, so it wasn't covered by Veterans Affairs?
No, nothing to do with
Should
Veterans
it be covered
Affairs.
by Veterans Affairs?
I think Veterans Affairs has to expand and try different things. What works for one person may not work for another. Did that work because I believed it worked? Maybe. Did it work for my wife because it was more spiritual? Maybe. But the fact is, we both were willing to try something to help us. We want to get better. We're willing to try things.
Okay, well, as service becomes more complicated, care should become more specialized, in my opinion. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and another challenge is if you're a rural client, my mom has a friend who's a veteran, and he goes to a one-stop shop in Edmonton. Myself, I've asked for assistance in advance for a trip to Regina. I have to go 12 weeks to see my psychologist for sessions. I asked in advance, can I get my wife pre-authorized to drive me maybe, or maybe a overnight stay? I've been driving 3 hours there and back. I have to get a doctor's note and say exactly which day do I think I'm going to need. So after a 3-hour drive, I'm going to have an hour and a half session. I know I'm going to be drained, but I don't know which day. So it's challenging.
Thank you. And Mr. Hurley, I'm sorry I've got very short time here, but you mentioned about how the care narrows when you start dealing with Veterans Affairs. So would you be in agreement that we need to expand the service that we need to provide for veterans? And I see, Mr. McKay, you're shaking your head, and Mr. Bona is also agreeing.
20 seconds.
Okay. Just recently, I was informed one of our friends who killed himself, who was in the military, and his wife no longer is receiving the ability to get treatment for herself for any type of psychological issues. So maybe someone can explain that a little bit clearer.
Well, that's shocking.
Thank you very much. Mr. Casey, for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to all of our witnesses for being here and for sharing some very powerful stories, and thank you for your service. I'd like to start with Mr. Woters. Have I butchered your name, sir?
Yes, that's
I have
correct.
butchered your name? Could you correct me?
You said it correct. Thank you.
Woters?
It's Wouters, actually. But
Woters?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, it's okay. It's.
I'd like to start where you left off in your opening statement, and you talked about the perfect storm, and I was trying to jot it all down. You talked about drugs, unresolved trauma, and a global misapprehension. Can you just walk us through the elements of the perfect storm, and then I'm going to ask you for some specific recommendations where we can make a difference in this phenomenon of veteran suicide. What would be the key recommendation you'd like to see come forward?
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. So the perfect storm is, first and foremost, unresolved trauma. So everybody has unresolved trauma. Have you heard of the ACE study, Adverse Childhood Experience Study? Anybody? So that study was done in '97, and they basically interviewed about almost 20,000 people in North America, and it had to do with the top 10 reasons that people have childhood trauma, and there was 10 categories, okay? So every form of abuse, so physical, mental, emotional, spiritual is on the category, incarceration, living with somebody with mental illness, and the list goes on. The number is 10. So the average person in the military has an ACE score of 6 before they don the uniform, which means they have PTSD before they start. before they start. So we should be helping them before they start. And so trauma, unresolved trauma is the number one issue. Psychiatry and psychology in their own documents state they have no strategy or plan to resolve trauma. That's not what they're after. They're there to maintain and manage. Their entire approach is symptoms approach, which isn't root cause approach. So what I'm delivering is let's find the root cause, let's resolve the trauma, which we can do, and I can help people, who are diagnosed with PTSD in 3 hours no longer meet the criteria for PTSD using this approach. So it's the entire science of the soul, brain, and body being used. Number one is unresolved trauma. If you solve the trauma, all of the symptoms go away. So my clients have symptoms reduction of 60 to 80% on average. So there's 82 symptoms on the Federal Emergency Management Agency categories. And the average person here will have 15 to 45 symptoms per trauma. The average person has, on average, 15 to 45 unresolved traumas at any one time. So if you just do the math on that, let's say 10 traumas with 20 symptoms, you got 200 symptoms walking around at any one time. And this is not just 15 to 30 people. This is 1,500 life stories I have completed at 20 hours per person in 4 categories over their life of physical, so personal relationships, spiritual, education, and vocation. So this is all categories. So the second issue is the mind-altering drugs. So there's been studies done in the past where it shows that this issue started in the early 50s when the Sackler brothers in the U.S. bought a marketing agency and a pharmacy and started releasing slow-release opium and heroin in pills, which led to the opioid crisis. It's also responsible for the current over-medication, which is also the history of psychiatry, is that it's also not a science. And in fact, the people that started the process have admitted that there are no biological markers. So there's nothing scientific about psychiatry, but it is also causing a rapid point towards death on the suicide. So the average military personnel who's diagnosed with PTSD has 3 or 4 major drugs, all with black box warnings on them, which means they're 6 times more likely to commit suicide. This is constant, regular diagnosis for those in military. So the other thing about ACEs I talked about earlier is if you have an ACE score of 6 or more, you're 15 times more likely to commit suicide. So just those 2 right there is 21 times more likely. So we're actually moving our vets with the current system towards death at a rapid rate. And that's what's happening within our system.
ACE score?
Sorry?
Mr. Casey,
The term you just used.
So the ACE score, Adverse Childhood Experience,
Okay.
Our military, the average person goes in with a 6. If you have a 6 or more, last month I had one of the military personnel who I did an evaluation on right up front. I sent him the ACE score, and he had 10 out of 10. On average, most of my military guys have a 10 out of 10 ACE score, which means they're not only 15 times more likely to commit suicide, it's even higher. So combine that with the meds, now we've got a perfect storm for suicide. So
thank you very much.
Yeah.
I apologize, Mr. Wouters. I apologize, Mr. Casey. Pour 2 minutes et demie, Madame Gaudreau.
2.5 minutes, Madame Gaudreau. Thank you, Chair. Madame Duhem has several post-its on the desk. I don't know if there's anything else that you'd like to add for the next 2.5 minutes. It would be quite gory. We don't need to do that. What I would say is that personally, at the moment, I have a $3 million debt. $3 million personally. I'm ready to invest it in my project. Together towards the future. Heal souls, feed the land. For the day of human rights. Because it's not just men who die, it's women and children too, who die in bus shelters. $3 million of prostitute money. Your money. It's not the government's money, it's the taxpayers' money. Everything I need from you is a little napkin when I ask for help and everyone asks, what's in it for me?
Ma mission?
My mission is to counter capitalist aberrations. It's better to have Sephora kids. Down with capitalist aberrations.
Merci d'être 100% toi.
Thank you for being 100% you, together for the future, with the signature. Another capitalist aberration is that you can't get involved in a solidarity cooperative if you don't pay $10. $10. Do you think the little baby that died had $10? No.
3 millions.
$3 million of my own money that I won with rapes in the Canadian Armed Forces.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much.
5 minutes, please.
Thank you so much, Chair. I do appreciate all of you being here. We need about 10 more hours. That being said, Mr. Walters, you talked about brain, body, and soul, a healing of the whole triangle, and began to speak about the core findings, just so that everyone knows on committee. SEPTRE is SEPTRE, 7-Edge Program for Trauma Recovery. That is Ernie's program. He has trained many people. It's very effective, so it's an opportunity, I would say, after this. You've submitted all of these notes, have you? Okay, great. So can you, I would like to carry on from where Mr. Casey was. You went through unresolved trauma and mind-altering drugs. We don't have a lot of time, so just a very quick overview of 3, 4, and 5, and then how that works into this system that we're using right now, where it only treats fragments because we aren't dealing with the whole.
Correct. So the 9 non-scientific models, go back to psychology and psychiatry, and this is the one thing that the committee must look at, is psychology and psychiatry is self-governing. There's no external regulatory body that expects them or demands them to actually prove that it's scientific. The National Institute of Mental Health in the U.S. past director for 15 years had said that even in 2011, they wrote a paper on and requested, where they were getting 500 signatures a day, requesting the APA to actually have an independent third-party scientific evaluation of the DSM-5. This was 2011. It's now 2025, and it's not been addressed. So they're refusing to actually allow an independent study on psychiatry. So the other major issue is that psychologists actually use the DSM-5 for their diagnosis, which means now I've got 2 dysfunctional bodies that the Veterans Affairs is using as a criteria for approving programming. So my program, which has amazing results with it, 60 to 80% reduction in symptoms, but also PTSD in 3 hours and less. Like multiple hundreds of people this has been through. As a result of this approach as well, is people no longer meet the criteria of lupus, fibromyalgia, multiple sclerosis issues, autoimmune disorders, because once the trauma is resolved, the autonomic nervous system shuts off, the body will heal on its own. So I've got hundreds of clients that can testify to this. And so this is a scientific model. So with my engineering degree, it meets all the 6 criteria for science. Psychology meets none. Psychiatry meets none. And so we have to look at who's allowing the process to be approved when they don't have independent credentials to actually fulfill it. And they're not claiming this. Psychology and psychiatry are not claiming that they have a solution. Why are they directing? Yeah.
Can I just comment on that? Because when Dave, we did the study on mefloquine here in 2016-17. I asked the psychologist that was in Somalia the question about when they face traumatic scenarios, do you see a difference in those who have a faith or a soul development as being more able to cope? And he didn't even hesitate. He said, absolutely. So that shows a bit of that. So you have one more here. I know you talked about professionals without trauma education earlier. Can you talk about repeated betrayal within the system? Just how that impacts.
Yeah, one of the, this was a national story. A number of years ago, one of our Canadian military went to the Ukraine and actually went to the Ukraine, but it was murder by war. Sorry, it was suicide by war. So the reason he went there was actually not because of PTSD from war, but PTSD from home. If I could have got to him before he left, I probably could have saved his life. But the tragedy was he abandoned his partner and his adopted daughter. And on June 11th, he left, and he left a suicide note, said, I'm not coming back. So they waited for 6 months for him to finally perish. November 6th, he perishes. For the next year and a half, the mom and the daughter, both suicidal, both had tried multiple times to take their life. It was the second time that the daughter tried. She took 19 pills, was airvac from Swift Current to Saskatoon. And that's when Chad Wagner from the Royal Canadian Legion, who's been funding my work for the last 2 years, and I've probably served about 25 to 30 vets, is that those two came to me, and Dave drove them, so thank you, Dave, to my clinic in Medicine Hat. In 4 sessions, I was able to actually help them release the trauma. They are no longer on any meds. The young girl was 14 years old. She was on 5 meds. 3 of the 5 meds were on black box warning. I consult with the psychiatrist and the doctor as I put this program through, requesting them to actually, now that we've solved the trauma, we can actually back off the meds. They're doing amazing. It's an amazing story. So Dave's seen that.
Thank you.
So
Thank you again, Mr.
You're welcome.
Walters. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Mrs. Erdl, 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you all, as we said, for being here today and sharing your information, your stories. Mr. McKay, I understand you're involved in the Amherst Legion, and I want to thank you for your continued service to veterans within the community. This community has interviewed veterans from across the country, although not that many from Atlantic Canada. I'm wondering if you could share your thoughts on how if there are challenges that veterans face in Nova Scotia or Atlantic Canada that may be different from other regions of the country.
One of the biggest obstacles we face is access to proper care. Again, like Darren was saying, the one-stop shop. When I had to go to Halifax, it was a 6-hour day for me. 2 hours of driving, 2 hours of counseling, 2 hours driving home. We don't have in Cumberland County, because we are a small border county, that kind of access to medical care. So it was either drive 3 hours to Fredericton or drive to Halifax. Pick your poison on that one. So I know we have a need for a one-stop shop in all rural, as many rural settings as we can get them in, but Nova Scotia definitely, and Saskatchewan would be another one that would struggle with
Right.
that kind of problem.
Right. Thank you.
Sorry, Manitoba too. Sorry, Gordo.
Yeah. Yes. Thanks. This summer, I heard from Legions in Amherst, Oxford, and Spring Hill. I think that members had created programs to check in on one another, buddy checks and coffee chats. Can you describe in more detail those programs and how they help support veterans being isolated?
The Amherst Buddy Check coffee going, and then one of the guys that worked with me on the Afghanistan Memorial, he became the president in Oxford. He got the Oxford program going in conjunction with another veteran who already had a previous program, so they mended the two together. And we've seen our veteran group of those coffees up to 10 people. It's a small legion, but we've had up to 10 or 12 guys in there. And with the recent closing of the Ralston Armories in Amherst, we've absorbed their coffee group as well, so that's upped our numbers with that.
Right. And how has that helped to support those veterans?
Still giving them that weekly opportunity to go out and have coffee and talk to their peers, just to get out of the house and not think about the daily grind.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. In your experience and in considerations of things like institutional trauma, sanctuary trauma, how do organizations like the Legion best serve veterans or their families when they're facing a crisis?
It's really hard actually now for the Legion to serve in certain ways because of paperwork, with Veterans Affairs paperwork being Protected B, if you don't have a security clearance, if you're not a case manager or the provincial service officer, you can't complete that paperwork by the letter of the law now for a veteran. So in that sense, it's made it a little hard in our area. We've had multiple homeless veterans in our area, and I just actually had an email today on one before I came to committee for housing. And in the last year and a half, that's the third or the fourth email that I've gotten or known about just in that time, but there's probably more than that.
Okay, thank you. I'm sure you're familiar with the organization Vets Canada, with the work that you're doing. They're being considered, of course, by the town of Amherst to work out of the Ralston Armory and provide services for veterans in the community. How can the VAC and DND ministers work with Vets Canada to enhance access to mental health resources for veterans?
In whatever way they can help attract the professionals to that area through any kind of sponsorship programs that the Veterans Affairs can do or the government can do to attract these medical professionals that we need to the area. Okay. But to have that one-stop shop, it would make life for a lot of people easier than having to have the worrying about trying to get a hotel room approved to have your caregiver come with you. It definitely would make life at the end of the day a lot easier for people.
I'm working on that. Let's have a chat. Thanks so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. For 5 minutes, Mr. Richards.
Okay, I promised if I had another opportunity, I'd ask you about the next topic of sanctuary trauma. You know, I guess I'll just throw it out. Maybe I'll start with you, Mr. Wooters, because obviously you work with a lot of veterans, and I'd like to give each of our veterans that would like an opportunity to speak to it. But I guess I want to ask what sort of a role, like when a veteran is constantly betrayed, ignored, delayed, denied by the very organization that's set up to serve them. And we heard the other side asking questions about all the other great organizations out there that provide the programs that only have to exist because our government isn't doing the job. What does that do for a veteran in terms of that sanctuary trauma, and does that lead or further the thoughts or ideas around being suicidal?
100%. No, it's a great question. And so when you think about, so I mentioned earlier the ACE score of 6 or more, right? So they're already traumatized from their home. So many of them go to the military to find family. That's why they go. I'm going to find family here. And then what happens is they get into the family, they find out that they're maybe not functioning at a level that they may want, and pretty soon they get turned on. And then if they do have issues, then all of a sudden it now becomes trauma from the military. So then this issue becomes a real issue within not only the member, but then when they try to access services, it just continues to re-traumatize it. So the issue in every single instance is that there's when you have childhood trauma, and everybody's got it, so there's a developmental trauma that most therapists and most systems will not, because they don't spend the time with the members. And basically the message that they get from early on, right from attachment through to 17, is that you're not good enough. That's the message that they get. So it's subconscious, but it's regularly there. It's one of the things I treat in the process. And in that moment, then every time they get triggered by the sanctuary or by the facility or the military, then it's sending them a message that they're not good enough, which they already have got in amplitude throughout their life. So this further attacks the issue of self-worth and self-value, which is the lowest level of consciousness that leads to suicide. So earlier when I was mentioning those two women, right, I counted 22 traumas within a year and a half from counselors, doctors, police officers, teachers. So the daughter on her second attempt, it wasn't because of her dad. It was because of felt like she was a victim, and she felt like she was essentially a criminal. And that's why she attempted her life the second time.
I'd like to open it up to any of our veterans who'd like to weigh in on this in terms of, like, what does that do? You know, the sanctuary trauma that exists from, some of you spoke to it earlier about the issues you have in dealing with Veterans Affairs and, the excuses and the paperwork that force, not to get the help that you need. What does that do for someone who might be suicidal? Mr. Simmons.
For me, and it's just personally, I sent a message to VAC, and when I get a notice that VAC sent me a message back, it sets me back because I have no idea what it's going to be. It's probably not going to be the answer to the question I'm asking, which recently I asked a question and they answered, but they did not answer the question, so I had to resend the message. They did apologize for not answering the question. But yeah, just knowing that you're going to have to fight again. Like I said, at the beginning, it was good, positive for me, but after that, it seems like it's a fight all the time. And for a lot of people, they're giving up. They're tired of fighting.
Mr. Hurley, I see you nodding your head. I assume you want to weigh in.
Yeah. So war trauma, right? Or what Mr. Ernie was saying about what you bring to the party, right, before you join the military, mental health-wise. But war trauma, moral injury, and then sanctuary trauma. Big ones, the last two right now, and they get mixed, but it's very, very different. Moral trauma, maybe you drop a bomb. Sure, it lands on the bad guy, but it also kills civilian. Now you have to live with that the rest of your life. Sanctuary trauma, opposite of what Ernie says, you go special forces. You're told you're the best, you're the best, you're the best, you're the best. And then all of a sudden, medical release, boom, no one cares. You're off, and you're left wondering, you're left having to deal with, hey, I know it's more important for these guys to focus on the mission, so it's not worth it for me to engage and be a part of it. But that really destroys you as a person. And that's just putting a medical release in. All of a sudden you get put out, you get a medical release. Your first 2 years are owned by an insurance company, by Manulife One. And then at the end of that, they make you do an employment accessibility scale. You've released me. Why is the veteran having to reprove all their injuries over again? You want to talk about sanctuary trauma? I have a partially detached retina. I'm 50% blind in my right eye. It took 3 years to come to a decision. First decision came up. They said, we're going to give you 2%. I fought it through Bureau of Pension Advocate. I wait another year, right? Go to BPA, awesome organization. You don't even have to say anything, man. We believe you. You don't even have to state your case because we believe you. The issue, though, is there's no performer on this that says, hey, you're half blind. It only says that when you see around this big floating mass in your eye, you can see clearly. So you have 20/20 vision, and you're good at 9% for grievous irritability.
So
Thank you. I'm so sorry, Mr. Richard. I'm very sorry. Thank you very much, Mr. Hurley. I'm so sorry. I have to interrupt. I let him. I was very generous. Thank you. Madame Auguste, 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chair. My first question will be for Mr. Wooters. I hope I pronounced that correctly. In the document that you sent to us...
Good?
Yes.
Parfait.
In the document that you sent to us, the fourth point, you're talking about professionals with no trauma training. In the beginning of the committee, we talked about the importance for those at Veteran Affairs be trained with trauma-informed practices. In your professional opinion, how can Veteran Affairs better equip caseworkers so that the caseworkers can have practices that can help and not re-traumatize the veterans?
That's an excellent question. Thank you for asking that. I think the understanding, first and foremost, and I think this will probably shock almost everybody in the room probably, is that medical doctors, psychiatrists, psychologists have not a single class in trauma during their core degree granting, like zero. And so to become a trauma expert, you have to put in the hard work. So we've heard of Bessel van der Kolk, Gabor Mate, and myself. I've put in, and I'm being conservative, 50,000 hours on this topic, and it's actually probably more like 60 to 70,000. Like the information's out there, but you got to actually go dig it up and then actually be on the front lines of being a practitioner. So the answer to the question is, we can provide. I can provide that kind of training for the people here because that's what's required. Is that they must understand that trauma, you can actually train people. We're designed as humans to actually overcome trauma. And the key component is to address all three aspects of our design. So body, brain, and soul. So I do 3 hours of psychoeducation before I work with a client on how the brain is affected with trauma, what's it's designed to do, how the body's designed, and what its limitations, and how the soul is the key in the story. So it goes, soul leads, the brain releases, the body heals. Like, this is a science. And so by training and equipping them with this, like, would be the way to do it. And so trauma-informed care is information. Trauma-empowered care is transformation. It means the person can actually resolve the trauma. So in 12 hours of training, I can train a person to actually resolve all future trauma. Because once, yeah.
Merci beaucoup. C'est très intéressant ce que vous...
Thank you very much. That's very pertinent. I'd like to come back to what you discussed, the ACE score that you mentioned earlier. Often you see veterans that have 10 out of 10 scores and have a much higher likelihood of dying by suicide. I'd like you to elaborate on that subject.
I missed the last part of that.
Can you please elaborate a bit more on the ACE score?
Could someone just repeat? Yeah, so just
ACE
repeat.
score. Elaborate.
Okay, so, and how it relates to suicide? Okay, so on the ACE score, that ACE score is the number of individual traumas that person has. So they would be checking, are you living with someone that's suicidal? Yes. Have you been fondled sexually? Yes. Have you been living with someone that's abusive, like physically to you? Yes. Have you gone with dirty clothes and not enough food? Yes. So there's 10 of those. And my recent client had 10 out of 10. So he's suicidal, like almost without exception. The measurement when I'm doing my initial assessment is they're in severe psychological distress across 7 mental health areas, which I can explain later. But the issue becomes it's a soul wound. And so even on the moral injury that you were talking about earlier, is that the soul's the first missing component. The second missing component is the ability to actually release the trauma, which is actually forgiveness. So globally, through all the major independent faith groups, I've studied 94% of the world religions, no one really knows how to actually operationalize forgiveness. But forgiveness in the Greek means to release, to let go, to no longer hold on to the offense, which trauma is, which makes it 100% about the offended, 0% about the offender. So when I help these military peoples, I help them to actually release the offense with that definition, which means it releases their soul from being captive. And then what it does is it actually shuts off your autonomic nervous system and the body heals. So I can actually see this right before my eyes take place, and they're no longer suicidal, like within 2 treatments like that. So it directs the therapy, the ACE score. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wouters. For 2.5 minutes, Madame Gaudreau.
Madame Gaudreau for 2.5 minutes. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I don't have much time. However, we really have an opportunity to have as many solutions and ways to intervene. And I don't know for you, Madame Duhem, if you would like to tell us what kind of treatment either helped you or did not help you, and how you were able to access certain treatments. Having treatments takes courage. To have courage, you need to realize that you're worth it. When you're told...
But don't get caught. Vérité, devoir, vaillance. The Royal Military College of Canada Alumni Association invests in the mission critical academic, athletics, bilingual, and leadership development opportunities. You spend millions billions in training soldiers, but then you throw them out just like garbage. The solution is simple. Just like we do with women that are terrified for their life. They have une maison d'urgence.
And a women's shelter?
Let's call that the psychiatric ward, just for fun. And then we have a second level shelter, une maison deuxième étape, merci Chloé, merci Marion, where we teach these soldiers that we have trained to kill, not to snap and kill others. Just like I almost killed my neighbor after she threatened my life. I almost snapped. So then I moved out. Everybody says, you're crazy, you're crazy. I am crazy. I am trained to kill and I'm about to snap. Do you really want me to complete this act? You've trained. You spent millions trained to kill. So let's train these soldiers to lead the coopératives de solidarité.
Solidarity cooperatives. Let's train them to lead solidarity cooperatives.
Hours. Is that what you said? 2 hours. 3 hours. I have $3 million in debts that I have invested in this project. $3 million of my own money. Well, actually, it's everybody. It's money. It's my whore paycheck. Merci. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much.
I'm going to split my time with my colleagues. But I wanted to, the last piece that I mentioned in the first round I had was about commemoration, and I just wanted to ask one question about that to you, Mr. McKay, because you're involved with the, you were behind the Afghan monument that's in Amherst, Nova Scotia. Can you tell us a little bit about that process and whether you got any help from Veterans Affairs?
Well, first off, I started it in 2022, as soon as I became the Sergeant-at-Arms at the Amherst Legion. I had a meeting with the town of Amherst CAO. Within half an hour, he was on board with the project. He asked me when I wanted to unveil it. I said September 11th, but I said, how about the end of Legion Week, the 23rd of September, and that's where it was unveiled. Veterans Affairs did not contribute to the project. The Commemorative Partnership Grant Unit, I had multiple engagements with them. The last one being by Skype the day the PSAC strike started 2 years ago. And the answer I was given was they're not funding new monuments. And if you were putting up a memorial for marginalized veterans, we have money for you today. And I said to the Commemorative Partnership Manager, I said, you know Ainsworth Dyer, one of the first 4 Canadians that died in Afghanistan? He was African Canadian. She didn't know what to say to me. So our Legion raised $42,000 and paid for the whole thing, minus donations from the town of Amherst, province of Nova Scotia, with in-kind.
Well, thank you for picking up the slack where Veterans Affairs failed. Let me just ask one more question, actually, because veterans have been waiting 11 years for a national monument for the mission in Afghanistan. What does that do for a veteran when first of all, they can't get the help they need, and then secondly, they can't even get, a basic monument to thank them for their service? What does that do for a veteran?
What's the point?
It's demoralizing. It's like, why do these guys go and die? Why do I have 12 friends that didn't come home?
Garbage.
Right? The whole point of when I started this project, the term I used to our CAO in the town of Amherst was, I didn't want my generation of veterans being like my grandfather's, who was a Capion vet, fighting for years and years to get acknowledgement for Korea.
And Mr. Hurley, I don't. How much time do I have?
2 minutes.
Okay. If you can just, you had had something to say there, just very briefly though, because I do want to give my colleague a chance to ask a question as well. So.
I don't know what the government wants from us anymore. I don't understand what the point is of a military in Canada. I don't think we have adult conversations about what a military does and what they're supposed to do. I don't think we have adult conversations around the spending. And I sure as heck don't think we have adult conversations around the care that we're supposed to be giving people who said, hey, I'm going to put it on the line for everybody in this room.
Thank you for that. And it's understandable, but I really hate the fact that you feel that way. I understand why, though. Mrs. Wagenthal, I'll turn the rest to you.
What do I have? Okay. So both Dave and Darren.
Kathy, come closer to your
Oh,
mic.
okay, sorry. You have relationships and you have opportunities within your service, Dave. Do you know of any way that we might be able to track suicide amongst veterans? Because we're always told it can't be done, because unless they're members of VAC. So.
What are you asking me?
Well, let's put it this way. You served in Somalia.
Yes.
The Canadian Airborne was dispersed
Disbanded, yes.
Disbanded. You were there, and then you went looking for a lot of them when you went into this Mefloquine realization. How did you find out?
When I started reaching out, I would notice.
Just briefly, sorry, because I want Darren to
I'd start noticing clusters because when part of my verification process, for example, one roto in Afghanistan had the record of suicides that I've come across, which was 14 in one rifle company. There's
of that?
That's the record I found.
You found,
out
okay.
of the most through my
searching.
Interactions with people.
I apologize.
I've seen rifle companies with 8, 10, 14 was the record though.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Darren, do you have anything to add? It's important that we figure out how to identify when someone passes away from suicide.
When someone passes away from suicide and they're serving, we know.
Right.
For me as a veteran and as a former police officer, every sudden death that takes place outside of a medical facility is investigated by a police officer, at least everywhere I worked. We have boxes to check on a form. We used to call it a preliminary report of death. Why don't we put a box or a chapter there? Was this person a veteran? Yes, no, unknown. Take the effort to find out if they're a veteran, and then we can start tracking this.
You can get you a list right now.
Just
briefly.
Sorry, just one quick point. A veteran buddy of mine who served in the Medak Pocket in '93 with 2 PPCLI, Croatia, it was a group of 3 of them from the NSAS Guards that all went with 2 PPCLI to Croatia that year. Now, there's 1 alive. So that's 2 and 3. If you do the math, if you want to average it out, 2 and 3 veterans die. One was, I think both were retired or
so
out
this
when
is
they.
a suicide.
Mrs. Wagenthal,
Yes, thank you, ma'am.
Sorry about that. So sorry.
Can I just suggest that if people have more they would like to submit, they can do it in writing to.
Definitely invite all members
Because
to
Gordon
do
maybe
so.
get to respond.
Mr. Clark, for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And just wanted to touch on something, Mr. Hurley. I know you talked about in your opening statement and during the first round as well about the example in Australia and how you see that as a positive one that we could be learning from. And actually later this week, our next meeting on Thursday morning, we'll have a chance to hear from Jonathan Lane, who's the chief psychiatrist for the Australian equivalent of VAC, Veterans Affairs in Australia. So if you were us and you could ask questions, what would you recommend that we ask Mr. Lane, and what can we learn from him, do you think?
Yeah, I would ask for a holistic picture of just be like, what made you guys comfortable with this? Because that's what it really comes down to, is it's an education piece where we have such ingrained cultural stereotypes for 50, 60 years about psychedelics. So I would really ask, hey, how did you move this? How did you even move this forward and win people over? Because as soon as you say the word psychedelic, it has a connotation to it. So it's a big conversation that maybe it should be called like a neurotherapeutic instead of a psychedelic just because it's, oh my God, it's so scary. So I would lead with, hey, how does this work? Because Australia is actually way more conservative than Canada when it came to psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy, which caught the world stage off guard, the fact that the Veterans Affairs started funding it. So that's, yeah. Lead with why and how and what made people understand. The data's there. There's so much data and research behind this stuff. Texas, so they just passed $150 million into legislation for the study of Ibogaine for opioid use disorder and post-traumatic stress disorder with veterans. But they led with opioid use disorder. So Ibogaine, I think Canada is asleep at the wheel right now when it comes to emerging therapeutics for everybody, not just for veterans.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That's very helpful for Thursday, as I said. And I've got about 3 minutes here, so if I could, within that time period, and if you're comfortable or willing to, maybe I'll start here with Mr. Wooters, if you could just give us in, again, probably 30 seconds or so, each of you, your number one takeaway for us as committee members as we get close to starting to work on a report for this study. What would you say, if you could distill things down to one thing that we should take away from your testimony today and your experience in this field? Mr. Wooters, I'll start and then go down the line.
Okay, so number one is unresolved trauma is the absolute root to all illness and disease, including suicide. And then the other thing would be psychiatry and psychology, are actually leading this show, and they're not either a science. And so you're putting that they have where's the credibility for those two professions to actually guide the trauma approach when they have no expertise in trauma and they don't claim to have it? That's another major problem. They're leading it and there's no reason for it because they actually don't have the expertise to do it. And so one question that I ask, I treat psychiatrists, I treat psychologists. They confess to me that they're a fraud, that they're not actually solving the problem. And I said, well, it's not really you're totally responsible because the institutions are not teaching this. They're not teaching it. Thank you.
Yes. A few points. First point, if you guys want to stop the suicides within veterans, the communities, start screening for mefloquine use. Mefloquine's been given to the Canadian Forces members since 1992. It is actually what is driving our suicide epidemic because it's creating situations where, like myself, Veterans Affairs spent $250,000 in 14 years on one-on-one counseling sessions for me. Did nothing. It wasn't until my doctor finally got frustrated and snuck me into a brain injury treatment program she was using for young Afghan vets. And within 3 months, I'm starting to deal with my deployment to Rwanda. And then finally, Ernie finished it off and actually took me up to a veteran retreat by PA, where for 2 3-hour sessions, after that first one, he started to get going. But after that second one, oh my God, I got no problems with long-term trauma issues. When I get into a situation that triggers me, I don't get swamped with visual imagery anymore. So it does work. So screen for mefloquine use. Ernie.
I apologize. I want everybody to speak, but thank you.
You need to treat us as individuals. We all join the military or the RCMP as a team, but we're individuals, and it affects us differently. And you have to let us try things that we think is going to make a difference, because if we think it's going to make a difference, it may make the difference.
Just like Darren said, the biggest thing right now we all need to work together to get this solved. We have a Facebook page right now for the 2 PPCLI guys. There's not many of them that have reached 65, 60 even, whether they've died of natural causes or unnatural causes. We need to all work together to get this solved.
Okay, yes, psychedelics, good. More importantly, a thing called operator syndrome. So just like what Mr. Wooters was saying, we are just looking at things through the lens of post-traumatic stress disorder, subconcussive blast wave. Anytime you fire a rifle that's larger than a regular assault rifle, you're going to have a subconcussive blast wave, which damages the brain. Very different from CTE and from impact. When you have brain injuries, it presents like post-traumatic stress disorder. If you have low testosterone, it presents as post-traumatic stress disorder. If you have substance use disorder, it presents as post-traumatic stress disorder. We are broad brush painting post-traumatic stress disorder on a position where we're not even looking at the whole body. We're not even looking at what's happening. So we really need to open our eyes and start looking about understanding how the body keeps the score.
Je suis victime.
I'm a victim of a war crime, but it's not considered a war crime. Because it was done by my brothers in arms. Those who were supposed to help and protect me.
Entertain us. Nothing more, nothing less. Victime d'un crime de guerre.
Victim of a war crime that will never be recognized because it happened on a Canadian military base in Gagetown in Farnham, in Moose Jaw, at the Royal Military College of Canada in Valcartier, in Bidoua. That's just a few of the military bases where I went. I dream of changing the world an hour at a time, one rifle at a time. I dream of healing our souls, protect our homes and our rights.
For thee, let's stand on God. For thee, guard for thee together. Pensez à investir.
Think about investing in souls of your fellows, babies who are dying in bus shelters because it's too cold, because the mother was forgotten by the system. Stop blaming her. Help her.
Vous allez pas faire un...
You're not going to give a gift. Nothing is free. Invest in human health, in human souls. I got rid of all the red tape. One napkin to help you.
All the people avec votre signature.
With your signature, let's create a viral movement. Thank you very much, Madame Duhem.
Mr. McKay, Mr. Simons, Mr. Bona, and Mr. Wouters. I apologize for the French. Thank you for your courage. Thank you for coming today. Thank you for your service to all of you, to our great country. So this will stop this portion. I do have a few a minute of your time, member, that I have to go through for a budget. So just give me, I apologize to all of you. I do need to just get some consensus with my colleagues. Excusez-moi, je vais juste passer un côté.
My apologies. We need to do some administrative housekeeping. Quickly, 2 administrative subjects, 2 budgets were sent to you via the clerk. A budget for the study on barriers to entrepreneurship among veterans, a budget for the briefing with the Minister of Veterans Affairs, which took place on October 21st, 2025. Is it the will of the committee to adopt these budgets?
Parfait.
Perfect. And our next meeting will be held on Thursday, November 20th, 2025. We'll resume our study on suicide prevention among veterans. Does the committee wish to adjourn the meeting?